Hi, Coach. Luke Mullen from the Lincoln Journal-Star. What do you like about the way that Dana Holgorsen calls an offense and the opportunities that provides for the wide receivers?
Well, I think the biggest thing with Dana is his confidence. Obviously, he's been an offensive play caller for a really long time, and in between that and his head coaching experience, he just knows what he's doing. He knows what he wants. He's very demanding, just as Coach Rule is himself. But just demanding and challenging and pushing the players, I think he's going to, allow us to get the best out of our guys.
Hey, what kind of potential coach does this receiver room have when you look at the top end ability from what you've been able to see in the mat drills and early on?
I think we got a lot of potential. Obviously, we got some young guys that we're, happy about. A lot of talent in that room, but the biggest thing is we don't have a lot of production in that room, if that makes sense. We got one senior wideout with Daikiel. The rest of those guys are, 1 year or 2 year starters at most. So I think the biggest thing with mat drills and the drills we do Tuesdays and Thursdays as far as football is just, logging reps and, instilling confidence in those guys, working on technique and just, continuing to get better every day.
Maybe just with the Lincoln Journal-Star, what made this opportunity the right opportunity for you?
I would say the biggest thing is one, just the tradition of Nebraska football. The tradition of Nebraska football, Coach Rule and his track record. He's a heck of a head coach, so, having a chance to, work for him is big for, any coach, if you're a coordinator or assistant coach, as far as your development. I think another thing is obviously my relationship with Dana. We got a pretty good relationship and kind of used to, played in his system, worked for him in his system, so I worked for him for a long time, and I think that was kind of what attracted me here.
Obviously with Husker 24/7, how have you seen Dane jump into as an older guy, helping lead that room in mat drills and stuff like that?
I think at first, so Dane's he's a lead by example guy. He's really not vocal, but he's done a heck of a job. He's done everything that we've asked him to this point. He's very mature. He brings like a veteran presence to that room, which is really good for those guys. Not only us as players, but just for the or coaches, but for the players to have somebody to look up to. And if you check his his stat record, the proof is in the pudding. He's gotten better each year of college football, so it's hard for those guys not to follow his lead, especially with how hard he works.
Who is your vocal leader?
Who is our vocal leader? I think we're still trying to figure that out, if I'm being honest. In the bowl game, obviously we had Jahmal Banks. So he was a pretty good leader, and just now I think the room's still trying to figure each other out. I think we got some young guys, some in between, and then obviously Dane's the oldest. I think the biggest thing from now into spring ball, as we learn and as we go, is just trying to find the personality of the room, which a lot of those kids have personality, a little bit reserved right now, just trying to do right, and I think the personality will come as we go.
Broadly speaking, what traits do you seek in a receiver? Not only the physical stuff, but the intangibles, but the physical too. What traits do you want in a receiver that you recruit or bring here?
I mean, size, speed, just as everybody else. Size, speed, hip fluidity, play strength, and then ball skills. Want to be able to catch the football, and then a very big trait that we're harping on right now, especially with perimeter blocking and things of that such, is toughness. We want tough guys that are going to be able to stick you through and finish. Whether it's a rep, whether it's a play, whether it's a drill. Just one thing we're harping on right now is just finishing. So that takes extreme mental and physical toughness. So.
Coach, did I read right? Harley Gilmore was 16
Yep.
when you got him at Kentucky.
Yep.
How big was last year for his development, and now where is he at?
Yeah.
I assume he's only 17 now, so he's still a very young player.
Yeah. So he just turned 18 this past December, but my first time meeting Harley, he was already on campus when I got to Kentucky. He was a 16-year-old kid. I think last year was huge for him. He reclassed up, so he missed his senior year of high school and entered college. I think it was just big as far as just getting in a routine for him, living on his own for once. Having the structure, having the schedule, kind of having a, plan, live by himself without his parents. I think he went through some growing pains last year, but, watching Harley now and then last year from this point, it's night and day. I think, this is the perfect place for him. Coach Rule does a heck of a job. He doesn't take it easy. He pushes those guys. He builds relationships, but he also holds them accountable. And I think a lot of the off-field stuff with Harley is carrying over to the football. He's put on a lot of weight, since he's got here, so he's doing a good job.
Can you go back a little bit and talk about how much Dana influenced you as far as wanting to be a coach? Was that something you went to West Virginia that was at all on your mind, or what kind of a role did he play in that track in your development?
Yeah, obviously when I was in high school, my senior year of high school, Tavon Austin, Stedman Bailey, and Geno Smith, That was their senior year at West Virginia. So I wanted to go play, for him at West Virginia because of his offensive system initially. Fast forward, I was a 4-year starter for him, loved playing for him. We butted heads sometimes. Obviously, he's a tough coach to play for. But, when I got let go from the Bills in 2017, I kind of volunteered as I figured out what was next at West Virginia. Long story short, I took a summer vacation with him. It was probably one of the best trips I've ever taken to that point. And I got back and he asked me if I wanted to coach. And, the rest was kind of history. I thought I was going to get into coaching year one. Little did I know. I was a program assistant for a couple years, and I kind of got a chance to learn and grow from Dana. Obviously somebody I respect in his profession and outside of the profession. So I would say his presence in my life has definitely, led me to this point where I'm at today. I'm sorry.
Where'd you go?
So we flew to Destin, and then we flew to Marathon, Florida about 4 days later, and then we flew to Key West about 2 days later, where I had a chance to meet Mike Leach, God rest his soul, which was pretty unique. Mike Leach and Dana Holgorsen in the same room at about midnight on a vacation. It was pretty fun. And then yeah, I'll leave it at that. And then we went back home. So obviously, had that experience, went to a few different places, met some good people. So when he asked me if I wanted to, coach or get into the profession, I was like, of course. I've never been a part of anything like that, and I'm happy I did.
He mentioned in December, after coaching Ja'Cory Barney for a few games, that he had talked to Ja'Cory about how he reminded him of Tank Dell.
Mm-hmm.
Do you welcome that comparison? Is that too much to put on a player who's been in college 1 year? What do you think about that, knowing your history with Tank?
First thing I would say is Ja'Cory's an unbelievable kid. I mean, coaching him leading up to the bowl game was a tremendous amount of fun. I think the biggest thing about him, and I bet Ja'Cory reminds Dana more of Tank, just of how he carries himself, his energy, his aura. He's very he's always happy. He works extremely hard, and that's the thing about him. Now he's tiny like Tank. He's actually a little bit bigger, but he works hard. He thinks he's the biggest one in the room. He always wants to make a play. He's a people pleaser, so. I think, anytime you got a good kid and that skill set and that nature, he has a chance to be all right. Now, to say he's going to be the next Tank Dell, I hope so for all of us. But, Tank was a tremendous player. There's a reason he's playing for the Houston Texans right now.
Hey, Coach, Steve Martin with Inside Nebraska. With Isaiah Hunter, what was so attractive to him in the portal, and what do you think his potential is in this offense?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Isaiah was his size. And then obviously he had a pretty good season last year. Not only his size, his track record from last year, but he's also a kid with years. I think the biggest thing with Isaiah, he's only been in college for 2 years, so he's still growing and developing. So he's not going to come here, nowhere near where he needs to be. And it's our job as coaches and staff members, and I think we have a great staff to get it out of him and, kind of help build off of what he did last year.
When you inherit a wide receiver room and you're working with wideouts who've already been coached by different coaches before, how do you kind of blend the developing them to be a better wide receiver, but then also developing a personal relationship with them? Like, how does that come together?
I think the first thing, taking the job here and meeting a lot of these guys for the first time is the relationship aspect, still trying to gain their trust, vice versa. And I think that'll happen naturally over the course of time. I think we're doing a really good job at that. I think Coach Rule does a really, really good job of, putting staff in a position to develop relationships with the players, if that makes sense. Now, previously, they had a good coach, if I'm being honest. Garrett was a really good coach. And, everybody coaches different. There's different styles and techniques. So just kind of, pick up where they left off and implement my own touch on these guys and kind of go from there.
Obviously, Dana's offense kind of knocked it out of the park in the Big 12 and in the AAC. How do you feel like it's fit for the Big 10, which has got a lot of really good defense?
Yeah. Big 12 was fun. We had an extreme amount of fun playing in the Big 12 and in that conference, a really good conference. I think, transforming into the Big 10 now, seeing what he does. One thing about Dana, he has a really smart offensive mind. He has the ability to adapt to personnel. And I think that's one thing that's very unique about him. I think that you'll see an implement of, a little bit of Big Ten style of play, but also, what he's used to. Like we said, he can adapt. So, whatever our strengths are offensively, I'm sure that's what we'll do. And I'm kind of looking forward to that, if I'm being honest.
Hey, you've seen a lot of quarterbacks too in your time. what do you like about Dylan? Because he's the guy that's gonna be throwing to your receivers.
Yeah. It's hard not to like Dylan, if I'm being honest. I think the biggest thing is I get I was in the weight room actually yesterday. I thought I got in there early. I was in there at 6 o'clock. Dr. Elza actually beat me in there. She's on the treadmill. And then I look across and Dylan's over there, taking boxing lessons with one of our strength coaches. So I think that one tells you about his work ethic. His arm talent is what it is. I mean, he's got tremendous arm talent. He's extremely smart. He comes from a football family. He's hungry to get better and learn and grow. I think, you see Dylan on the field and on tape and how he carries himself, and then you have a conversation with him, which he is a mature kid, but then you realize he's only 18, 19 years old, which is, shocking. So happy to have a chance to, not only be around him, but have our guys be around him. I think he can be pretty special.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.